Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is a man who is trying to meet the changes of the ever-changing world of the news. His name is Brian Marovich from Newport Dispatch.
Yes.
I always want to call you the Newport Transcript. Why do I do that? I know you caught me doing that.
Yeah. You mentioned it on Facebook, the Newport Transcript.
I don't know. I'm not. Probably Transcript though would be more print, and you're not. You're not print.
Right. Could be.
So who is Brian Marovich? I know I've been in the media world now for about 20 years, and suddenly you burst onto the scene. What, about a year ago?
Yeah, we just finished our first year online. I'm basically just a guy who likes to write. I went to school, studied creative writing at Murray State University, went overseas to work on the Great American Novel, but that didn't really pan out. So I was more of a creative writer, fiction, and then when I came here, I got a few freelance opportunities with a couple local papers. I was doing some work with the Sherbrooke Record, doing the Border Report on Thursdays, and then just decided to put it all online for free and just go from there, and just our readership grew and just keep going.
Right. So has the last year gone really well for you?
Yeah, it's been, more than I could have possibly imagined. It just took off pretty much overnight. We had about a handful of followers after a couple months, and now we have, over 19,000 readers each month. So it's like, from 1 to 100 in 30 seconds.
Like I remember how we connected, because you had to find out, I remember there was a huge blip in your fan base, and I think you tracked it down to when I posted it on my site, and all of a sudden, boom, it went out of the site.
That's it. We were getting maybe 50, 60 page views a day, which page view is different than a viewer, so. But then you posted on your Facebook page, I think you wanted to know who I was. I think you questioned, was this Sue Davis's project? I think that's what
I posted it, and somebody asked if it was Sue Davis was behind this, because I know Sue had planned on doing it. Right. And I said, well, I'm not really sure. Maybe he will chime in, and that's when...
I think, everybody kind of came over to see what was going on, and they came to the site, and we had 500 unique visits that day, and that was all from your Facebook post. So.
Well, I liked.
And then I called you and I thanked you right away, because I could see where it happened.
Right. The way we're reading the news now is slowly changing, because I'm going to tell you, when the internet first started coming out, and I started seeing CNN and that, and I said, I will never be one of those people that reads his news online. That's just not my thing. Now, granted, I still do pick up some of the local papers, but I've got to say, I'm mostly online now with the news.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much how it is. In the beginning, people thought of the World Wide Web as, worldwide. And so it was if you started something online, the goal was to reach as many people throughout the world. But now everybody's online, and everybody's reading news online, so the natural, transition is local through the internet.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of people are reading the paper, are reading the online version. There's all sorts of ways to get the news now.
And I have 3 kids in their 20s. 2 of them are 28, one's 23, and they're college educated. They're very in touch with the world, but none of them pick up a newspaper.
Right.
They get all of their news by the internet, and I've asked many people in their 20s and 30s, and that's where they get theirs. Do you think that's a growing trend?
It is the trend. It's definitely what's going on. The one thing is, we do read differently online. So they say that we, as a rule, people scan more than they read online. So you kind of have to write a little bit different for online. So whereas where somebody picks up a paper, they're probably going to, read the whole article line for line. Online, they're more likely to just kind of scan through it. And with younger generation, that seems to be, one of the downsides of such a digital world is not as much effort put into it, you know.
Right. You know what I find though is I have for my Northland Journal, I've been doing this for 13 years, and we go to about 50 states. So I said, okay, the mailing cost is totally prohibitive to ship out around the world. So I have an online version, which is the exact same thing, but with history, people still want to, 99% of my people, they want to have it in their hand because the journal you're probably going to keep, but with a newspaper, what are you
Becomes
going to
kindling for the fire.
Yeah, and there are. I think there's a place for all of us, but it is becoming nationwide. It's an increasing challenge for print newspapers to
Right.
to keep up with it.
Yeah, and a lot of cuts have been made at newspapers where people lose their positions because they have to figure out a way to change where they want to keep the paper, they don't want to get rid of the paper, but most people are reading the news online, and it's kind of like
most of the younger generation. I would even say I think I'm pretty advanced on reading my news now that I'm nearing 50. But I don't find many people in their 20s and 30s or teenagers picking up a newspaper.
No, I mean that's it. But you'd be surprised that the age group of people reading Newport Dispatch, for example, it's all over the place. It's not just younger. In fact, we got started. We didn't get started through a grant from AARP, but a grant through AARP did help us get started. And we looked at the data and showed that this, it's older people that are reading their news online, and there's older people mostly, getting their news through us locally as well. So it's,
Well, I think what makes yours really good is because I watch yours and I recognize some of the people like Jane, who often comments. Jane is sitting down with her husband
Right.
now in Puerto Rico.
Right, yeah.
And so it's really it's a lot of advantage to her. Like for example, I have subscribers all over the world now because of that technology.
Right.
But it doesn't. I don't have that much of an online following when it comes to the entire version. But as you can see, my website, my Facebook site is just everybody.
Your Facebook page is kind of like it brings community around your publication, and that's sort of what ours does too. You mentioned Jane being down in Puerto Rico. For me, the most interesting story is a guy who contacted me, and I forgot his name. I really regret that, but he left here in the '60s and he moved to Oklahoma, and he reads every day, and so that's pretty cool because he still feels the connection to his hometown.
So where is this going to take you? Because in 1 year, you really have made
Right.
You've left a mark. Where are you going?
To be honest, Scott, I mean, I want to take Newport Dispatch News, to the top, and that's my goal, is to just in the long run be the dominant media source for Orleans County, and we're also trying to push through other counties throughout the state. We just started one in Addison County, where I'm working with a writer down there to basically do the same thing that I'm doing, and he's based out of Middlebury. So yeah, we're just gonna keep doing the same thing, keep trying to grow the audience, connect the audience, and just do good local reporting.
Now, do you I get up every morning, and if you look at my post, I get up early. Do you get out of bed and love what you do?
That's it. Working for yourself is a lot different than working for somebody else, but even better in the creative arts, because it's really what we're here to do. People like us, that's really our mission in life, is to be creative. And so for me, yeah, being able to have a possibility to make a living doing that, it's I wish I would have maybe not gone to school and started doing this a lot earlier. You know what I mean? Because you waste a lot of time trying to figure out what you're going to do, and you sort of just need to start doing something.
But on the other hand, about going to school, like I have a degree in psychology, and some people would say, yeah, but you're wasting your degree. Absolutely not, because so much what you learn in school, it's not directly related to your major. It's like, for example, the reason I ended up being a writer is I was kind of weak in writing, so I had to take writing classes, and I still have weaknesses, but I just love doing what I do. I just love talking to the people. I did the news gig for 7 or 8 years. I love doing it because you got to admit you meet a lot of interested people.
Right.
And but the thing is I now operating on those strict deadlines that I used to have to face. That's
See, but that's what's beautiful about online is I really don't have a deadline. I have, schedules that I like to keep, and I have, certain stories or whatever that I can maybe hold off till the next day. But I don't really have that deadline because if I could post something at 11 o'clock at night, I don't do that, but I could, and I know that in the morning it'll be there for people to read, and if I make a mistake, I can wake up, go change it, and that's the thing. So it doesn't have the same, and I think that's the problem that the papers face is they have a deadline, and they have a time that they have to go to press, and if something happens, in this area on like a Saturday, I mean, I put it up on Newport Dispatch News for everybody, and by the time the paper comes out, it's old news.
You know what? One form of media. Well, one WCAX though, they're really working to survive this evolution because you can find out that same. You can find out. They have their set news program, but they're also very internet savvy. Like every once in a while, I'll post something and immediately I'll get a phone call from WCAX. Hey, can we use that? I say, are you guys stalking me or what? Which I have a great working relationship with all the media.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with social media and online is just you don't know who's going to see it, and if it gets in the right eyes, like you say, they could use it. And for example, we took my photographer Tanya Mueller. She took some pictures of the moon, and one of the I forgot which organization it was, but they said they wanted to use it. It was in New York. They wanted to use the picture. I don't know. They were following us on Twitter, and that's the only reason they saw the picture that we posted. So yeah,
I'm working with 3 film crews right now. One is based out of Australia. The other one is based out of New York City, and then there's another one who just contacted me. They're not looking? Well, actually, a couple of them are looking to interview me, but I get contacted because of my internet presence, not so much to talk to me, but they're looking for specific type of characters. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I actually have to blow their mind because the Northeast Kingdom, we might be a little backwards, but there's some of these film crews, they want to portray us like we're in the Stone Age.
Right.
And so when I tell them that yes, we do have electricity and we have retired most of the horses, but no, in all seriousness though, is being on the web opens up your door to the world. And as I said, just in the last month I've been contacted by 3 film crews from around the world who want to spotlight the Northeast Kingdom. Mm-hmm. So it's
yeah, and it's kind of, it reminds me of a post that I think you had made a mention in your Facebook page about how we bring the local news to the world. And now, majority of our readers are within the county, right. But we really did reach almost every country in the world in that first year. There's about, maybe 5 or 6 countries that we didn't reach. Now, granted, that's just maybe one person in one, country on the other side of the world, but still, they're still seeing Newport, or they're still seeing the area. It's a very beautiful place. Anybody, can see that.
Well, I suspect Rick. I suspect because he's a follower of me, Rick Bruce. I don't know if you recognize that name. I'm sure he must be one of your. He's been sitting over. He's taken an extended tour of Afghanistan. He's been there for 3 solid years.
Okay, yeah.
And I suspect he's a follower of yours, and so he's sitting on, I think, a mountaintop somewhere in a foreign country. And
that's it. I mean, no matter where you're at in the world, you can check in with the local news through Newport Dispatch, and that was the goal. And you were asking about plans for the future. The main thing, I can see hiring more people to help. That's the logical next step, so that we could do, for example, sports. Local sports, I think, would be something that would really be good for us because we don't have to worry about printing a certain number of pictures or choosing a number of pictures. We've put as many as 20 some pictures on one article.
Right.
just because we have the space, we don't have to worry about.
And you're unlike me, where I'm recording history, where I like to go extremely into depth because I am recording history that's going to be disappearing pretty soon. Yours are not long articles.
No.
They're shorter articles, straight to the point. But then you also like photos.
Yeah, I mean, in digital media, it wouldn't make sense not to take advantage of all different, forms. So photography is one. We did a little bit with audio. The video is going to be another thing we're going to push for in the future. So yeah, I mean, why just limit it just to the writing? And again, going back to how people read the news online, it's more of a scanning for information than an in-depth read. So yeah, we tend to keep it, pretty short and to the point. And we elaborate on things if they need to be, you know what I mean? We did tribute, like for example, I did a tribute for Adrian Patnode when he passed away. And again, that was, getting in the right hands. So 7 Days Vermont picked that up because, he was such an amazing person. And, he really represented our area. And it was good because we could print it online with the pictures and they printed it. And so, people got to see a little bit more about him.
Yeah, I think you're going in the right direction by expanding out. It's just like, for example, all these shows. The show you're on right now is going to be on YouTube for the world. I have my radio show, and they're all volunteer, but it gets people and their messages out. The one thing, little off the topic though, we were talking about how the internet opens you up to the world. Sometimes, do you ever read your posts or just either personal posts or business posts and just say, "Hey, this is going out to the world, everybody. You've got to be." Careful about that image you portray.
Scott, it's funny, but it's kind of the opposite. Of course, I try to read it to make sure that there's no, mistakes. But as far as like style, when I was working with fiction and creative writing, was more, almost scared to publish anything or scared to let anybody read anything. With journalism, to me, it's a lot easier because, it's just kind of fact-based,
Well, I guess I was going more towards the personal, like people trashing their families online, and it's like that kind of stuff. My pet peeve though is, now that I'll go back to is when people write something and it's a very nice thought, very well put together, and somebody forgets a comma, then you have what they call grammar Nazis out there. It's like, come on, guys, this is just.
I've been thankful for a couple of the grammar Nazis in the beginning because I made some mistakes, kind of rushed some things, and some people jumped in and said, and and it's good to have more eyes, and I can fix it online, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, it's true. I know what you mean. You sometimes just gotta, kind of shed the fear of maybe making a mistake and just going and doing it.
My editor is also friends with me on Facebook, and she's a darn good editor, but she gets to see my work. She gets to see how dangerous I can be without her helping me with the print version, because your fingers get ahead of your brain sometimes,
yeah,
or vice versa.
The thing is, not all people are writers, and that's like, if you worked in news, you know a lot of the stuff comes in through press releases or whatnot, and so some people are very close to their organization or their business or their message that they're trying to get out, but they're not really able to have that writer's touch to really do it. And so a lot of my work is editing a lot of that stuff too, and so yeah,
here's a question that I think, with this instant news, there has been some really sad stories about people finding out about the death of a loved one right on like there was a case a couple years ago on the Channel 3 website where this grown son actually piped up and said, "Is somebody trying to tell me my father's dead?" Mm-hmm. How do you decide when something's going out?
It's happened where people have found out about accidents that took place where people they didn't pass away, but they were seriously injured, and they found out about it through Newport Dispatch. So, and I have to be careful, because it's one thing, for example, with WCAX, their audience is a little bit larger and is not so honed in on one
Right.
specific area. So if they put up a report about somebody who maybe got in a bad accident, it might just be 3 or 4 sentences, but if I'm going to put that up, there's a good chance that there's somebody in the area who knows the person, is related to the person. So they want to know what's going on, so I have to be, it's something I have to pay attention to make sure that there is an obligation to make sure that you don't just sort of haphazardly throw something out there and then somebody thinks that somebody's, dead, and they're not. They're, maybe seriously injured, or maybe, even could happen that, somebody else in the car was hurt. So there's a censorship of,
And because I've even watched your site, I can tell you must have a direct feed from the state police
Yes.
press, and
Yeah.
those a lot of people don't understand. For right or wrong, the media is just reporting what the police have.
That's it.
You're not sitting there twisting things
No.
and turning the. You get
Been
it.
accused of it a few
Yeah,
times.
you get it, and because I've often I used to cover court occasionally for the Chronicle when Paula Fay was out or on sabbatical, and there's always been a part of me with the court news that felt that you shouldn't be in the court news until you're found guilty, because in small town America, you always you have a habit of remembering them being arraigned, but you don't ever.
It is. It's something I pay attention to, because
But you don't cover the news, though. You don't cover the court news. do you?
Occasionally, I've done a bit of that, but mostly, like you said, through the police.
Yeah.
For example, I talked to the chief of police in Newport, and basically, it happened a few times where they posted pictures, surveillance photos, and people recognized it on our Facebook page within 10 minutes, and I contacted them and let them know, this is what 3 people are telling me, this is somebody you should question or whatnot. So I think they like that we bridge that, that audience gap there, because they do a good job on their Facebook page as well.
Yeah, they do.
But we get a lot from the police, and if we post something about somebody being arrested, it's not a rumor. They were arrested,
Right.
and if they weren't, it's up to the police to correct it, and then we'll correct it.
Right. Now, but we've talked about that negative stuff, like the court news, the police,
Right.
but you also have a lot of good stuff.
I try to balance it. Originally I planned to do more community events, and I wanted I wasn't going to go the nonprofit route, but I was kind of thinking about it, more sponsorship instead of advertising to be able to provide a free paper, because in order to make it free, somebody's got to pay for
Right.
it, So I did it, a lot of those community events, and that helped me get going. It kind of, people found out who we were because I was there introducing myself and whatnot. But people really want to know right away crime and mayhem, I call it sometimes. It's not the most positive thing, but it's an important part of the community for sure, and it's something that I've not been ashamed of or embarrassed to say that that's the beat that we cover.
Right.
And it's by far the most popular stuff on the site.
Do you know one thing that I've slowly come to understand, too, especially with the internet still being, for the most part, a younger thing, is there are a lot of young people thirsting to see other young people too. It's like, for example, I believe it was last week, I had on a young woman, 24 years old, Shelby Blake, and most hunters are men,
Right.
and she's this attractive young 24-year-old hunter, and the response I got to it was phenomenal, because from all her young, because we said in our wisdom as we age, we love to look down at the younger generation, say, I have a diary entry written in 1880 talking about the lazy young generation of today. And I think there's younger people like to see stuff, and that say other people don't.
Yeah, no,
And I think you're filling that void, though, too.
I think so, yeah. And I mean, I saw that interview that you did, and it just goes to show that there's a lot of really, good young people around here that are doing really cool things.
You do know the vast majority of them are,
Right.
Or do you believe that?
Yeah, I do. I'm not so connected to the community because I'm not from here, so I don't know a lot of the people by first name basis kind of thing, but I get a general sense that there's a lot of people doing a lot of really interesting. I think Corey Therian, for example, running for office, and he's a young guy, and he's giving back to the community, so yeah, I don't have that negative outlook towards the future for the young generation. Maybe not necessarily here. Other parts of the country, maybe.
I think today's generation, for the most part, are just so brilliant, and I take a look at my own kids. I take a look at their friends and think, wow, they are they doing things different? Sure, they did. The same way as I did things different from my parents.
Right, and it's like going back to what I'm doing. It's different than traditional media, but like it or not, it's here, and it's the wave of the future.
Right. So tell me, you're not from here, and I've been here since, as I say, some of my branches of my family, we've been here since the glaciers moved away, but we've been here a long time. When I say here, it isn't like the border doesn't exist to me in many ways, because like our family is both one side of the border or the other. But so with me, I know just about everybody. I can still tell you that Warners, they're from, Warners are in Lowell and so on. There's family names that are connected to certain communities. How has that been for you to figure these things out?
It's been a little bit of a struggle, but Facebook's helped a lot too, because I don't have a personal Facebook page, but running Newport Dispatch, I see a lot of the same names commenting. Or unfortunately winding up in the paper sometimes for some maybe somebody gets arrested or whatnot. But no, I start to kind of to see who's who, and the community events too are something where you learn kind of who's in charge of a lot of these things. And to give an example, Mayor Manette was a big supporter of Newport Dispatch from the get-go. He didn't agree with everything, but he took his stance, and he let our readers know where he stood, and I had a lot of respect for that. And he didn't know.
And do you know he's a computer geek?
Right.
Paul and I are good friends. Actually, Paul and we've both, must be it's our distinguishing foreheads, we've both been confused for one another.
But he supported the site from the get-go, but if I walked into a place, he wouldn't know who I was, So it's been fun to learn who's who in the community, and also dealing with the advertising side of business.
Right.
Meeting other local business owners is something that I've actually really enjoyed with this job, which is something I thought I wouldn't like to do. I thought just writing and taking pictures and stuff would be the glamour of it. But actually meeting local business owners has been a lot of fun, because I can find out what they need, and I know that everybody's kind of struggling to make their bottom line, and so I can talk to them as a business owner myself and say, what can we do to make sure that our readers, that they get your message, and that they maybe give you some of the business. And I think it's just good for the community to look at it that way, instead of saying, well, they're going to pay for me to keep doing what I'm doing, but have no obligation to go further. And we just want to make connections between those businesses. And that's a lot of fun as far as getting out in the community and meeting people.
Are you just a one-person show?
No, we've had as many as 3 people and working with us. But as far as most of the reporting, I do most of it myself. Tanya Mueller does the photography. She's she's a huge asset to it, because people love photography, and so a lot of times, picture says 1,000 words kind of thing. So she'll come out with us sometimes and do some pictures, and it's really good.
Well, I commend you for sticking with it, because when I started the Northland Journal 13 years ago, granted, we're in totally different playing fields. Your news isn't going to be my news for 20 or 30 years.
Right.
But there were people who said, nah, not going to work. Right. But I also can pretty guess what your last year was like. You maybe not been eating romaine noodles all the time, but you weren't getting rich your first year.
I'm not really looking at it as a way to although of course I want to make a substantial amount of money, as anybody else does, but the success really doesn't lie in in the amount of money I made. For me, the success lies in the fact that people read us. And within a year, I mean, more people read us than just about anything else around here. And also local businesses trusting me to advertise for them. I mean, that's a big success for me, because in the future, like I say, if they need something, I can in turn, go the extra mile and help the local businesses, and that's that's going to be successful for me and for them and for everybody.
And there is, and there is a lot of things happening here. I know there's a lot, people focus on the things that are not happening, but there really are a lot of things happening. Yeah. I talk to a lot of happy contractors in this area. No, they're not doing the large housing developments, but there's a lot of happy business people. Business is slowly starting to come around, and I just think that we need to focus more on the positive while working on the negative.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes people focus too much on the positive to try and motivate these things to come through, and it's kind of a drag on progress, because if something doesn't happen overnight, people start screaming and yelling, and that's not going to help things.
Though, I would suspect, though, you see it on your site, because I see it on mine. No matter how positive something is, there's always the same group of people that has nothing constructive to say.
Right. Yeah. It's funny to a certain extent, but then you kind of get a little bit. I've had to block some comments. I'm not censoring comments, but when people start calling names and stuff, there's no reason for that. I've been threatened a few times, but that was because we're dealing with crime, and so you got to be careful. But that's why we really only report what comes from the police. So it's not something I worry about, but yeah, it can be an issue, I guess.
You're threatened for the court news. It reminds me of a more humorous story about my case. We never did figure out there was, when I used to do the police beat for a while, somebody was sending me dead monarch butterflies, but with no message. It's like it was from out of state. It was like we never figured out what the heck was that about.
You never know what's going to happen. But it's you're in the public, you're a public figure, and it's the same. Even though I still try to stay out of the public spotlight. You know what I mean? It's what happens. You're a known person, and people not going to always agree with what you're doing. But overwhelmingly, we've had a lot of, support, and just the audience growing. It's because people are telling their friends and neighbors. For example, if somebody's in a picture that we do at the website, if it was in the paper, they could say, well, I'm in the paper, but the person has to go out and get that. Right. With us, they could just share it with their friends, and then everybody sees it, and the uncle in California sees it just the same. Right. So that's how we've grown. And I assume, God willing, that's how we will keep growing,
Yeah, we keep on. As I said before the show, I'm very much into this technology, but, now that I'm nearing 50, the technology just keeps going so fast. Yeah. As we were talking about, apps and then Instagram and everything, because I remember when I started Facebook, I had to be brought into it kicking and screaming, like, this is, on a personal level, I'm not interested. On a personal level, I'm not interested in putting my dirty laundry out there. On a professional level, and telling the world about the Northeast Kingdom is, as you can see, that's really working out well.
Yeah, it's the same with me. I mean, I don't have a personal Facebook page, but the business Facebook page is a lot of fun. And as far as the technology going faster and faster, it's something that even scares me, because you get used to one thing, and then they're onto something else. And so, you and I are pretty savvy with Facebook, but, eventually people will move on to something else, and we'll have to learn something else,
You think we are computer savvy? Well, he might not be as savvy as us, but Don Wheatley's about 90, and he's over the Bel Air, and he, instead of taking out his wallet, showing photos, he has his computers and everything, and I spend a lot of time in nursing homes, and it's amazing the technology some of those people are learning. I have one guy on my Facebook. I'm going to be doing a story on him. His father was killed in World War I, and he's 98 years old. He's I think, yeah, 97 to 98. He comments quite often, and so this, even though it's still a relatively young person thing, there's a lot of older people reconnecting with people.
Even it just goes back to the fact that everybody's online, so you can think of the World Wide Web as a local web too, and I think that's been our success, because although the people from all over the world somehow find our site, that's not who we're focused on. We're focused on the same people who read the local paper, or the same people who go to school here or whatnot. Everybody in the area is connected through that web online. Age doesn't really matter because especially older people, they learn to use the technology to communicate with their family. And so, a lot of people are on Facebook just because, their sister and so is on.
Even my father just turned 80. He just got himself a Facebook.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean that's it. Everybody's online, and that's the thing with news. It's the same thing. People are online and they're getting their news online. But the one thing is in the industry that, from what I've learned, is people really aren't willing yet to pay for the news online.
No, you're right.
There's some people that will do that, but it's like historically the penny press. It's the same thing, except it was traditionally, a paper was expensive and it was only for wealthy people. The penny press made it that anybody could afford the paper. Well, the internet makes it free now.
Right.
So,
but then that means you have to make money. It's like, for example, one of my future guests on my radio show is going to be the folks behind Vermont Digger,
right,
which is I guess more of a statewide
right,
version
right,
of you, and I know they come up against the same thing.
Right.
They have to get a revenue source.
Yeah, and it's it's either going to be through advertising or it's going to be through donations. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but selling subscriptions is the harder one, because it's it's just the culture now. Everything online is free, good and bad.
That is
So.
that is the problem, because if you don't want to pay for it, and this one offers a subscription for pay, and I'll just go over here,
right,
and it's.
And that's why I don't see Newport Dispatch ever being anything but a free site, because that's how we started, and so it's harder to change, to try and get this huge audience and then say, oh, but by the way, now you're gonna have to pay for this news. People already like what we're doing. We could really lose a lot of audience that way. So for the most part, we're just going to remain free local news. Anybody can go on there and anybody can contribute. I'm always looking for people to send in pictures or stories. It really is a community thing.
I noticed you were asking for photos of hunting season.
Got a lot too.
And though, you can put photos of dead human bodies and not get as much flack as when you take deer hunting. I have been a deer hunter in the past. I don't hunt so much more now, and that's one thing. If I want to shake up people, I put a deer hunting photo on, and
yeah. Well, you were talking about the youth and the youth generation, and that's what we were putting pictures from youth deer hunting weekend, and you could see in the eyes of those kids as they got their trophies or whatnot, that they're learning something from hunting, and I think it's a positive thing.
As I said, I had on Shelby, 24-year-old woman, and as I told her, I said, I bet you don't, because we've got this idea that, yeah, we do have a heroin problem in the state, but the vast majority of the young people or anybody don't use heroin. And I said, how many people have you seen in the backwoods hunting shooting up heroin?
Right.
No. And
yeah, it seems to teach a lot of good things, and I'm not a hunter. I would like to learn. I think it would be an interesting thing to do. But with hunting season coming up, that's why Newport Dispatch is reaching out to the community saying, send us your pictures.
But you should, and I commend you for that, because the fact of the matter is I understand how some people don't like. Well, if you only reported things that everybody liked, you wouldn't be reporting anything.
Right.
Because even in history, I write things that really some people don't want to even think about. Like I've done stories about the cross burnings that occurred here against the French Catholics, the Ku Klux Klan, and it isn't that I approve of it, but it's history, and or other people would like me to whitewash the history and make it, much more kinder, gentler. No, that isn't my job.
And then, it's the same thing with the crime reporting too. If we didn't report all the crime, then somebody who maybe got arrested for something and they were in the paper, and somebody else didn't got arrested, they weren't in the paper. They might think that I'm picking and choosing too. So we have some guidelines. For the most part, DUIs under no circumstances do we report on that. Although we get the reports from the police.
Well, I'm sure if there was an accident involved.
If there's an accident involved, it's different. Domestic violence, which I think if there's an issue that I've learned that the area needs to address, is the domestic violence issue, because it's something I don't report on. Right. Because of the victims, but I see way too much of it coming from the police.
Yeah, and I think whether I think that might change some with the change in our prosecutor, because for years, like I know you weren't here when Keith Flynn was here, who's now he works in the Shumlin administration. He was outstanding. The last 4 years, I think, have been kind of a struggle.
Well, and it made for an interesting season politically, because that was the race was pretty heated, and it was fairly close. So yeah, I mean, it was definitely, talking to people, that was an issue that people were worried about, was who was going to be the next state's attorney.
Yeah, it was. It was I have followed a lot of races, and that was, if you get right down to it, the last year of Allen's term, throughout the winning, Jen winning by 1,500 votes, almost could be a book.
Right.
It was a phenomenal race.
And they all ran honest campaigns too, and that's something I posted on our Facebook page. Was it wasn't the dirt. I didn't find that you would expect from a race like that. They were all very respectful campaigns, and we had a couple. We had political advertising on the site, and so we had to find that balance to where if somebody's going to advertise on the site, we're not going to pick and choose who we're supporting. We're not supporting anybody publicly. It's just that they choose to advertise with us.
Yeah, this was actually the first year in 13 years we accepted any political advertising.
And VT Digger did also.
Right, but part of that too was I had a kind of, because for a while I served in the State House, and I actually banned advertising altogether to make sure I didn't advertise. When I served in the State House during my campaigns, you never saw anything, because I have a lot of faults, but I'm quite ethical.
Right. Well, I talked to the campaign manager for the Shumlin administration. He said that they were doing no print advertising this year, and to me, that was
I wonder if he regrets that though. Because you got to admit, that was a close race.
Yeah.
That took everybody by surprise.
And I don't even know if it was true. I'm not saying this was just something he said. But the point is, that's where we're at.
No, I know.
And that's why I'm on the show, because I'm stepped up to that shift. It is a shift in where the advertising money is going. And if you can advertise online and you can get a lot of people to see your ad, it can link to your website. You can develop, a relationship with those readers by providing content. That's something that we do too. If a business owner wants to have a column or something, we're not opposed to that, as long as we let people know that it's a sponsored, post. But that's just another form of advertising.
Right. In advertising, no matter what, is one of the biggest struggles that a business faces. Because I've been in it for 13 years, and I could tell you, from a person who's been an advertiser and an advertisee, it's a struggle, because one form isn't good. One form, some advertisers will benefit from this, other advertisers will benefit from that,
and some like to play around with it. Put a little bit here, put a little bit there, and change it up, which I think is the smart thing to do. We advertise ourselves, and I don't know if you do that, but I know that I've spent a lot of, not a lot, but a good percentage of some of the profits that we made to make sure that, people see our posts, that people know we're out there. So it's kind of a necessary evil that everybody has to do. And I've talked to some business owners that say that the amount of money they spend on advertising each year, it's literally somebody's salary. So that's a lot.
And it is. It's a hard. It's a hard decision, where to spend it, because it could make or break your business. Because if you don't advertise,
Right.
you might be in trouble. If you advertise too much, you might be in trouble.
And I think that's where I'm hearing from local businesses is they know they want to get involved with digital advertising somehow, but they're not really sure how, because they're so busy running their business. The thought of running a Facebook page, for example, is just on the least of their concerns. So that's why we're also it's fun to work with the businesses in that too and say, well, here's your options. You don't necessarily have to advertise with Newport Dispatch, although it's it could certainly help, but get a Facebook page, and if you can't update it, it's kind of worthless in a sense, so maybe look to do something else. And, because a business owner has so many things to think about. Then they have to learn the technology too. It's too much.
Facebook though, the technology is so easy to learn now, and I tell people not every business would benefit from a Facebook, but there's a lot of businesses that would. You've seen the way I do it is, I take old photos, but then I'll get a photo that I know it's in this area, but I can't quite figure it out, or if there's people in a photo. I've had questions answered for me because of my followers from around the world that I never thought I would have answered.
Well, it's because you're using it the way it's supposed to be used. You're kind of building a tribe. You know what I mean? And you can turn to people in your networks and post a question, and they'll answer it. Or like we do, request photos for hunting season, and we'll get them. So that's the way to look at it. Is you're building a community. You're building that tribe around your product or your brand. And so maybe it doesn't work for all businesses, but at the minimum, I think at least it provides some sort of online presence for a local business owner, right, to where somebody can at least see their hours, phone number. Right. We're helping some businesses with the Facebook pages because it's something that they really, it's come up over and over when I talk to them that they want help with that.
And I think you're doing is one of the things I'm doing is you are interactive, as you were saying. People can submit their own work. Right. Is this we get new writers all the time, and because sometimes it's great that you and I like to write,
right, but
it's really great too when you can add new voices. Yours would be your kind of for what the Newport Dispatch does, or mine is a history vein of the Northeast Kingdom. It really adds something.
Well, one place where our paths kind of crossed too was with the story of fish, in Coventry.
Oh yeah.
And so you were historically looking at it as a historical event here, and we kind of both did the same thing where we said to people, what are some of your memories of this? And this is only 10 years ago, I guess.
10 years ago. It was the 10th anniversary, and
it's like people remember where they were, what they were doing when that happened, and so. How do you do that in a non-digital world? I mean, honestly,
well, what I did was, personally, I had my online story, but then, like with me, like as we record, we're in early November, so right now I'm finishing up the final stages of the December issue. I have a hard time remembering this. Okay. The December issue has gone to press, and now I'm working on the January and then starting on the February issue. But unlike you're the news. You don't want to get your news 2 months out. But with I write history, so the older it is, the better it gets. Right. And we're gonna actually start developing more books, because unlike most books, they're going to the web too. But the one kind of book that is almost guaranteed, at least for now, that you're going to sell, history books. Right. History books especially local history books. When I don't buy books hardly at all anymore, unless they're books that I'm going to read again, or like a history book. I want it in my hand.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's, how people feel about a newspaper. It's the same with ebooks. Some people say, well, I'll never read an ebook. I like that feeling of having the paper in my hand or the book in my hand. And that's, it is something that could definitely be lost, and it is unfortunate because people are just turning to the technology of having the
But
ebook.
I still think I still think there's quite a few more years when it comes to history books, though, because there is something, because I could read an ebook, no problem.
Well,
because I think it's very practical. Ebooks are.
I mean, I could see the technology being such that they'll develop it to feel and look like a paper or a book, but it's still digital. You know what I mean? Who knows what's going to happen in the future?
This is kind of a morbid thing to say, but when my father-in-law was getting ready to pass away, I mean, like right then, we had a minister there, and it was really strange to have him take out, instead of taking out a Bible, he took out a
like a Kindle or something.
yeah, and it was like it was there's still a place for whether no matter what you believe, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Christian.
Maybe they'll take the oaths by swearing instead of on the Bible, swear on the Kindle.
Yeah,
reader.
there's just a place that I still want to feel that paper. But I will say, when it comes to the news now, I have I try to support all of our newspapers, but I do get a lot of news, and it's like Channel 3 even now. If you miss the news, you can go to their website, you can watch most of it, you can...
Right, and that's what somebody had mentioned that they really enjoyed about our site, was they could search through old articles. Right. And so that's another thing where, if your paper is just printed, you could probably get those old articles, but it's a lot harder. Whereas with us, our first story to our last story is still there. And the interesting thing about that was when we had our first official year, the story that was the first day that I posted and the story that on the exact year mark, they were connected because it was the same person involved. The poor woman was at the protest, and that's the first story I did. And then a year later, she was in a car accident. So we could link to from both stories and let people know, it's come full circle. Right.
I wonder though, for the future history people such as myself, like, nothing I enjoy more than going down to the state archives, it's a state library in Montpelier, and going through those microfilm machine, all the microfilms. Do you keep your articles, do you have a database or anything?
Yeah, I mean, they're stored on the website. The pictures are stored, audio, video, it's all there, so I can retrieve it. But my mom was funny. She lives in Northwest Indiana, where I'm originally from, and she had said, well, I want to print out all your articles. I said, Mom, I have like almost 600 articles now, but that's, she wanted to have a copy of them. I said, they're always going to be there unless the internet crashes or something. You can always go back and read it. But yeah, it's all stored digitally. Pictures, everything's there.
Okay, now we'll have Todd, the producer of the show, put this online put this on the screen. But what is your web address?
It's newportdispatch.com, and again, it's just a free local newspaper, so you don't have to worry about being charged for anything. Just go on there, check it every day. Facebook.com/newportdispatch. That's a good way to follow us as well, because you can comment on an article or send us a tip or whatnot. And if you wanted to reach me, my email is just editor@newportdispatch.com. So the main thing to remember is newportdispatch.com.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on. We've almost covered an hour.
Wow. Well, it's an honor, Scott. As you know, I'm a big fan of your work.
Right.
I support what you do 100%.
Well, I appreciate
it's very,
it.
very important work that you do.
Well, I think we are both, and I think everybody. We're all, we're all in this for a ride. True. Because everything's changing. When I started my early days at the Chronicle, I was looking through a computer screen that was that big, and that's how we did our.
Now the computer screen is this big. It's just a phone.
Well, that's true too. Good point. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on.
No problem.
And thanks for all your good work.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.